This was a large sheet of decorative paper, and I made a little notation up here that the grain direction goes in this way. Let me just show you here. Flop it over this way. There's some resistance. Flop it over this way. Very little resistance. That means the grain direction is going in this way. So what we want to do is we want to cut our cover so that it will fold this way. In order to find out what we have for a cover, we need to measure our knocked up signature. So we put your ruler or yardstick so the top is at the head of your signature, and the ruler, you go down to where the tail of your signature is, the bottom, and you see it's 7 inches. I'd like to have a little bit of overhang. Make sure you don't have any bits that are sticking out that need a little extra more coverage. Okay, so I've got some areas here. Okay, I'd like to have a little bit of overhang, and there's a little bit of torn edge. So I'm going to go with 7 1/4 inches as the height of my book. That'll give me like a 1/16 on either side or so, head and tail. If you want the cover of your book to be exactly the same height, measure carefully. In fact, what I would do is I would get a strip of paper. I wouldn't even use my ruler. I'd get a strip of paper. I'd mark it head. I'd push it up there. I'd mark this down here to the deepest edge here that I can see as I look down my stack, and I'd call that tail. And then I would use this measuring space and use that as my ruler. Okay? And I'm just going to use my ruler here. I'm going to go 7 1/4. Besides looking for dings in your paper, also take a moment to make sure you don't have weird marks or other flaws in your paper. Okay, so I'm going to come over here and I'm going to measure from the 0 point of my ruler or yardstick down to 7 1/4 inches. Make a little tick mark. I'm going to do the same thing over here. Because remember, this is the way the grain direction is going, and so I'm going to fold here with the grain. Seven 1/4. What I'm going to do next is take my cutting board and put it under here. I have a station set up for cutting permanently, but then we have to break the camera down, so I want to just do it here. When you're cutting, never line things up so that you are going to cut into the piece that you want to save. Cut into what's going to be your waste or your reserve. So I'm going to flip this around. You can ignore that mark, that's from some other cover thing. And I'm going to line up this tick mark here with this tick mark. I'm then going to take my X-Acto blade and I'm going to push up against my ruler and press down hard to go through all the paper thickness. I'm going to check if I have. I didn't. I'm cutting at an angle that I don't normally cut at, so I'm not using as much force as I normally use. You want, if you can, to get it in one stroke because it'll always be even. Okay, so this is the strip that we have. We're going to take and fold it. Now, this has a smooth surface, and on this side there's sort of a fabric-y looking, you probably won't see it on the camera, but a linen-y kind of texture. And this is more smooth. I want the smooth on the inside, so I'm going to fold this so that these edges are butt up against each other. And I'm going to push at the bottom, push up and out. I'm going to take the signature And what's going to happen when we set this signature, which is all collated so we have matching surfaces across the spreads, and this, I'm using this actually for this test booklet because it came with this mark on it which doesn't come off, so this is a good use. A title page for a test booklet is a good use for a marred sheet of paper. But you want to knock these all up. This is marked T for top or H for head. When you put this in here, there's going to be about an eighth of an inch, a scant eighth of an inch at the head and the tail as you look down, and that will cover your edges, okay? I forgot one thing in the supplies. You also need a towel. So you're going to fold the towel over multiple times on itself. It only has to be as tall as your spine, so it only has to be that tall. So the pamphlet stitch is really simple. You can do a 3-hole pamphlet stitch or a 5-hole. I'd like to do a 5-hole. It's a little bit more secure. You don't need to make a template for your stitching. I just eyeball it. Now there's a little dot here where I'm going to put the center. We stopped filming because we weren't close enough, and so I tried to erase those. And then you just eyeball the center and put a dot right on the fold. Then you want to be about 3/4 of an inch from the head, so you put another dot there. And then you want to be 3/4 of an inch from the tail, so you put another dot there. All of these dots are right on the fold. Now you look at this dot, and you measure visually where's the center between those two. This dot and this dot, where's the halfway mark? Okay, oops, I didn't put that on the fold, but oh yeah, I did, okay. So now you have your 5 holes. When you insert the signature into the fold of your cover, make sure you have the same amount of cover coming off at the head as you do at the tail. Again, we're just eyeballing this.
Okay.
You're going to hold your hands in a V so it looks like this, underside. So you're holding on each side of this, and then you're going to have it over here with your thumb right on the fold. So you're going to have a vice-like grip. So remember, equal space at the head and the tail for your cover. I'm holding this in a vice-like grip. I'm holding it so that it is in a V. If it's difficult for you to do that, hold it closer to your body and have it lean against your chest. Some people like to have a phone book, if they've still got phone books, some old, very, very thick book, and they open the book up to the center of the book, and they put this in the book, and then the book sort of holds it together. I just do this by hand. What we're going to do now is, keeping this like this, we're going to go straight down with our awl through the spine, and I have this underneath my towel so I don't mar the top of my table. Now you can work up or down. I suggest you work away from your vice-like grip hand. Now we've done those 3. I'm going to come down here and do this one. And then I'm still going to hold this, but I'm just going to shift my thumb a little. And then and remember, my fingers are either side of the spine. So when I push down, I'm not going to push into my finger. That's very important. There we go. I always put my awl back into the cork so that if it falls, it doesn't land on my foot. And also, if I reach for it, I don't puncture myself. Now, we're going to sit this like this. I didn't do the measurements before, and it's been a while since I've done a pamphlet, and I just sort of eyeball how much thread I need. I'm not too concerned if I go over, because there's a decorative thing you can do if you're doing on the outside, but I'll talk about that in a moment. But I'm going to go measuring from the head to the tail. I'm going to do 3 lengths of thread, and then we'll see, based on that, if I should have gone less or more. It sometimes can be difficult to thread, so I push the end of my thread flat against the surface. Some people do it against their thumbnail, whatever. So it's nice and flat, just on the end. That allows me to pick it up and insert it right through the eye of my needle. okay? Now, we are not going to knot our thread. You're going to have a little tail here like this. That's about 3 inches. And then the rest is unknotted. Decide whether you want the knot to be inside or outside, because you start where you end. I'm going to start inside and have my knot in the center spread, because I don't like knots and bows and dangly things on the outside of a journal that I'm actually going to be holding while I sketch. If you like to add adornments to the outside of your journal, start on the outside. The sewing will be exactly the same. You will end where you start. I push this in and it goes right through because I kept everything in alignment. If your stuff was set aside for a moment and it's not in alignment, get it through your text and then align it with your cover hole. Once you get it through, go ahead and push through and pull. I recommend you leave about, 5 inches, and just hold on to this with your other thumb. Now you're going to go to the outside and you're going to move up 1 hole. You could go the other direction, it really doesn't matter. I went up 1 hole, and again it's all in alignment, so I don't have to fuss. You'll get better and if you practice, so don't worry. And I'm going to pull this up, and I'm going to pull to tighten in the direction of the spine, this way. I'm going to pull this way. It's the direction my thread is traveling, and it's in the direction of the spine, because if we pull up like this, I can tear all of that out and ruin my pamphlet. So always pull in the direction of the spine and the direction that you're traveling, okay? Now, I'm going to go in, yep, that's going through the top one, and go out to the cover. Now I'm here. Now that I'm out in the cover again, I'm going to go back to the first hole, stick my needle in, come out in the center. Now I will have to fuss a little bit. Oh, nope, I didn't. What you want to do is you want to miss the thread. You don't want to sew through your thread, or when I pull now like this, that won't tighten, but it tightened, okay? Now, you skip the center hole and go to the next hole down. And I felt just with my finger, yes, it's coming through in perfect position. There we go. On the outside, I want to go down to the last hole at the bottom at the head, or at the tail, and I want to go in, just like that. Take a moment to tighten, pulling in the direction. Okay, here. Now I want to go into the next hole up. And again, feel around so that you aren't sewing through your thread. Okay, now I'm going to pull up a little bit in that direction. And now I have to go into the center hole. That's where we started. Again, don't split your thread. Now, I'm going to pull to tighten it. Now, if you come out on the same side as where you started, the same side of this long thread or long stitch, you want to take your needle and just duck under so that you have a thread or tail on either side of that long stitch. Now, we're going to make a square knot. Square knot is left over, let's take this off.
Yep.
Put your needle on a piece of felt so it doesn't roll off your table and you don't step on it. Now, we're going to do a square knot. We're going to go left, over, right, so that's over, right, around and into, and then we're going to pull. Then we're going to take right and go over, left, around and into, and we're going to pull it tight. If you do a granny knot, which is the same procedure twice, left over right, or vice versa, then it will just slip out. But left over right, right over left, and you get a square knot. The pre-waxed thread will hold the knot very well. We're then going to, you can do one of two things actually. You can take this and you can rethread it, and you can go under and coil around a couple times this thread and do the same thing above that one, and then clip it off. So this will be sort of double like that, only with a little coil of thread. Or you can simply cut it off to about a little bit more than ½ an inch, 5/8 of an inch, and then that'll be fine. What I'm going to do is I'm going to coil mine just so you can see me do that. Normally on something like this, I would just cut it and leave it. If you don't like the thread showing in the center of your pamphlet, you can always collage. I'm just going to flatten this end against my finger so that I can just put it right in there. You can always collage a piece of paper over the center area and then work over that. I think it really doesn't matter, so I don't care about it. Here, this is threaded. I'm going to just slide at an angle, being careful not to puncture or mar my paper. And then I'm going to come back over and do it again. Let's do it maybe a third time. Okay, now you can press down a little bit, and what will happen is the wax will compress against itself and those little threads will stick together. And then you can just very carefully clip that close. So that'll stay tucked away. Then you just flatten the other end. Thread it through your, oops, I'm using a different needle now. There you go. Push your knot so that it's in alignment, so this is running down, this thread is traveling down. And just make sure you don't poke into your paper. One, come back over here. So we learned from this that my memory was correct. 3 times the spine height will give you enough so that you could actually have had some danglies on the outside if you wanted. I'm going to press this down a little bit and cut it right off, being careful not to cut my working thread. And there we have it.